I'm starting to believe the Battlefront franchise is cursed. If you haven't heard the recent news, Star Wars Battlefront, the classic collection, has just basically been getting dragged through the mud on the internet because of just how awful it's been. If you don't know what the classic collection is, it's just two remasters of the original Battlefront games that came out on like the PS2 and Xbox. Two games that made up my childhood along with so many other people's childhoods, which was probably the decision in putting out this game as a classic collection or a remastering. But it seems like, just like any other Battlefront property that's come out over the last god knows how many years since the original Battlefront 2, it flopped like a fish. The game since its launch has basically run into a whole bunch of issues, from performance and a ton of bug issues. So many issues that it currently has an overwhelmingly negative score on Steam. And again, it's all because of the massive issues at the launch of the game. One tweet I saw basically said that there was 10,000 people at launch night that were waiting to play the game, and that there were only 3 servers that had 64 slots for a total of 200 players. So if you were one of those 10,000 players, I hoped you liked waiting to jump into one of the online servers to play this game, which was kind of the whole big draw of buying this classic collection, was to play the servers online with other players, instead of the current way of playing, like how I've been playing on my Xbox One through the Game Pass, which has been by playing bots the entire time. I also saw a tweet that basically compiled every single issue that exists within the classic collection right now, and it's really bad. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go down the list so you can hear most, if not every single one of the issues that currently exist in Star Wars Battlefront, the classic collection. I mean, my god, some of these are so insane that, like, they rushed this to the sales floor. The game will crash when searching for multiplayer games on console, crashing in offline Galactic Conquest, missing half the cutscenes in the campaign, no inverting aim. Aim inversion is enabled by default in flight with no way to change it. The Xbox version can't have 2 controllers connected, or it disconnects both. Hitboxes are bugged, which means your blaster shots will go right through someone. Maybe they were going with the immersion of being like a stormtrooper on this one. The game is also locked at 30 FPS, which is kind of, to me, mind-boggling, because all it is just a simple port with some minor graphical upgrades. You'd think with how the game is built, you know, they could get it at 60 FPS. Apparently the lag is also really bad, and it's not just from this post I've seen this, it's from like across the board. Apparently, like, the lag is just god awful and makes the game completely unplayable. I've also seen players talk about how the texturing is really bad, like the game will just completely break and just drop a bunch of like weird multicolored squares around the map. I've also seen players bring up how that iconic loading screen sound has been changed. And I'm not entirely sure why they made this change. Like, it's something that just feels super unnecessary. Like, if you were just gonna remaster the games or like make them a classic collection, then make it an actual classic collection. Don't change any aspects of it other than the graphics and performance. Now, for the record, they have added more servers. That way more people can jump in and play. You're not gonna wait in queue times or so on and so forth. But the question then starts to be, why didn't you know this was gonna be a problem? Like, don't you see your pre-order numbers? Don't you see that 10,000 people bought this game and were actually really excited for this? Like, everything with this just screams cash grab. Like, they knew that people have been wanting and dying for a just remaster of some sort involving the old Battlefront games, that they basically just threw this thing together, said, we did some graphical upgrades and gave you online, and then just shelled it out and just did the old, we'll fix it later kind of thing. And look, this entire game could get better. Like, it has to get better at some point down the line, but when you're spending $40 on very old games with slight graphical upgrades and multiplayer, even though nothing works in the game, you could be spending that $40 on something better, like Helldivers. Or maybe you don't want to buy Helldivers and want to use that $40 on something else that's better. Maybe go get a nice dinner for yourself. Maybe donate to a charity, or maybe, I don't know, do anything else with $40 that's actually worth your $40. And again, like, I truly mean, this has to get better at some point, but if you're kind of just not into this right now and you'd rather just get your money back, I'd recommend looking into returning it. But also, the other big issue that exists with this game that is still, like, mind-boggling to me is the file size of this. Apparently it's like 60-something gigs or 40-something gigs. Like, how is any of that possible? Like, I don't get that. If I play the original Star Wars Battlefront on my Xbox Series X, it's like 4 gigs. It's how? All you did was just small graphical upgrades an added multiplayer service. It really takes up that much. But I guess there's a silver lining to this entire thing. At least the reviews for this game have been an absolute blast to read. Some of them are just like pure genius, some of them are pretty sad to read. Like you have one on the Xbox store from Lorebagger that basically states, "It's like the equivalent of finding your kid 20 years later and you see them hooked up on fentanyl while gooning in their basement." Or you could take advice from Tim here where he basically states, "Just get the old Battlefront 2 on Steam and install the Battlefront 2 Remastered mod. It's $20 cheaper and the mod fixes a lot of the issues from the PC version of the game. Not only that, but it has heaps of modded content as well as multiplayer support." And if that's one way you want to go, I could also recommend that, because even a potato computer could actually run Battlefront 2. I mean, my computer's like 12 years old and can still run most of the games that are out. Or maybe you're into the Star Wars puns, like Mr. Squidward here says, "You may sit in the storefront, but we do not grant you the rank of remaster." Or even the main man 94 who says, "This is where the refund begins." I'm not sure why Duriel actually recommended the game based off the review, but they go on to say, "I've played BF1 religiously for 20 years, and what they've done is something not even God can forgive. Also, nobody will read this, so suck up." I'm sorry, I can't get through it. Suck a hot fart out. Sorry. Ooh. "Also, nobody will read this, so suck a hot fart out of my tight ass Aspire." Or you have people saying like Bruh Moment that basically just calls it the biggest fumble of 2024, which I can't disagree with whatsoever. This was easy money. Like, doing this remaster was completely easy money. You knew a bunch of people were gonna buy it, at least I knew a lot of people were going to buy it. I guess the developers had no clue a bunch of people were going to buy it. And again, if there's anything I can tell you from just seeing all the reviews, all the gameplay, all the feedback that's been given, this entire game was literally just put together to sell as many copies as possible, as fast as possible, because there's nothing that sells better than nostalgia. And if this does anything, it's just another blemish on Aspire's record. I mean, they also had the kind of issues with that Nintendo Switch version of KOTOR. And also, just keep this in mind, but this is also the studio that's going to be working on the KOTOR remake, which is, I guess, canceled, not canceled. I don't know what's going on with that, but I think after this, they need to really take their time. I'm going to be looking at that game when it comes out and probably pump the brakes no matter how good it looks. But I want to leave you with saying this. There's clearly something wrong with the Battlefront franchise, and I feel like a lot of it comes down to just the developers and publishers of these games pumping out the most garbage content possible just so they can make money off a once beloved franchise. I mean, just looking at the Battlefront franchise as a whole, you had Battlefront 3, the original, be canceled. The Battlefront EA, which was a disaster because of the lack of content at launch, no campaign, so on and so forth. And then Battlefront 2 EA was an absolute disaster because of the whole loot box thing. Yet when they did all the work to get it to a point where they could have just kept adding content, they just basically abandoned the property as a whole. And then you have this, the Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection, which is nothing but a massive cash grab, a complete and total disaster. And honestly, if I had any recommendations for you, just try to get a return. If you can do a return, check the return policies based off where you bought it from, and make the best attempt to get your money back. Because here's the thing, you can return the game, buy the original Battlefront for less money, get mods, and then play online if you really want to, which I think was the big luxury with this anyway. I'll say it one last time, the game will inevitably get better, but I don't think it's actually worth $40. You can buy the original Battlefront for less money, and a couple other games on top of that are actually probably worth your money. Or you can go buy a game like Helldivers 2. I know I'm basically just dick riding Helldivers 2, but it's a really good game for $40. All in all, I'll say this. It's very unfortunate that this game came out the way it did. It'll get better, obviously, as I've said like 4 times throughout this video, but that doesn't make it right. Like, if you can buy these games for cheaper, then I would just go do that. It really is just an absolute shame that they're just using your nostalgia to bank off of it, but it is what it is. That's just the way the modern world of gaming actually works. Though I'd like to know what you have to say in the comments section below. What do you think of the Battlefront Classic Collection? Are you disappointed based off how it's been released? Do you think things will get better, or will you be sticking around? Will you try to go get a refund? I'm curious what you have to say in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, great. Maybe consider leaving a like and subscribing because it helps out the channel. And if you didn't, well, it's not getting much better than this. Thanks for watching, and well, bye. Here's a good comment. I didn't know it was possible to unfinish an already finished game, but here we are. The Star Wars Battlefront Classic Collection was the most disappointing thing since my son. I mean, how much more could you possibly screw up on a port of a 20-year-old game? This person gave it a recommended, but then said, yes, I recommend refunding this game. Luckily, they ended up getting their product refunded, so that's pretty good.